Good afternoon. My name is Jax Presentation, and I will be presenting the research I conducted on largemouth bass fishing. My research project studies the correlation between time of day and fishing lure effectiveness on largemouth bass. Largemouth bass are one of the most popular species of fish targeted by anglers for sport fishing in the United States. The activity can be traced all the way back to the 18th century and has grown into the large sport that it is presently. Today, largemouth bass fishing is widely popular due to the bass's widespread range and the low difficulty of catching the fish. This has allowed the activity to become one of America's favorite pastimes, celebrated by people from all ages, cultures, and backgrounds. On a professional level, tournaments are held in almost every U.S. state for entertainment and oftentimes money prizes. I chose this topic for my research project because of my interest in fishing. I have fished freshwater reservoirs with my family since I was little, and largemouth bass have always been my favorite to catch. The location that my data was collected in were freshwater lakes, canals, ponds, and rivers in St. Lucie County, Florida. St. Lucie County is a county on the east coast of the state of Florida. This leads me to my question. To what extent does time of day impact fishing lure effectiveness on largemouth bass in St. Lucie County, Florida? To answer this question, we must first look at previous studies that relate to this topic and their findings. To begin with, the authors of the article, Spectral Transmission and Shortwave Absorbing Pigments of the Fish Lens, write about largemouth bass traits and tendencies. This is important to understand because it provides information on largemouth bass feeding patterns and techniques, as well as the traits that help them hunt for food. Furthermore, the authors of Responses of the Largemouth Black Bass to Colors describe the colors that largemouth bass are attracted to most. This can be important to understand because there are several factors that can impact this, such as water clarity, water depth, water temperature, and light level. And lastly, the book, The Encyclopedia of Old Fishing Lures, written by Robert Slade, details what lures are most commonly used for largemouth bass fishing. This is crucial for determining which lures to use for this research project. The two key terms, fishing rod and fishing lure, are also important in understanding the topic. The first term, fishing rod, is defined by the Cambridge Dictionary as a long pole made of wood or plastic with a line attached to it and hook at the end of the line, used for catching fish. The second term, key for understanding the project, fishing lure, is defined by the Cambridge Dictionary as a device often made of plastic and metal used to attract and catch fish. This formerly researched information, along with my own knowledge, has led me to the hypothesis that time of day will have a significant impact on lure effectiveness. I believe that the different traits of the fishing lures will give them advantages at different times of day. The gap that this data fills is a combination of known information to reach a deeper understanding. There is already knowledge on which lures work best for largemouth bass, and there is already data on what time of day largemouth bass are more active. However, there is no research on the combination of the two and the correlation between them. On top of this, my research will be collected in a very specific location. Therefore, the data could be different in other places. For my research, I conducted a correlational analysis. I began by collecting my materials and planning my analysis. I already had most of the materials needed for the project, so all I had to get were a few new fishing lures and the live worms. I then began my research, collected, and analyzed my data. It is also important to understand the types of fishing lures I used for my research. I used 6 different lures, each with different attributes. The first lure that I used was the plastic fluke, a common bass fishing lure that mimics a smaller fish that bass may prey on. For the color, I chose white so it would stand out in darker waters. The next lure I chose was the live worm, likely the most common fish lure for many types of fish in North America for the past few hundred years. The worm is known for its movement and scent that draws bass in. The third lure that I used was the plastic worm. The plastic worm mimics the movement of a live worm, but without the smell. I chose to use a dark green colored plastic worm because I have previously found success with it. The fourth lure I used was the plastic frog. The frog is a commonly used topwater lure that takes advantage of the largemouth bass's reaction-striking instinct. I chose to use a darker frog lure to contrast with the sky from below. The frog is also known for his unique movements. The next lure I used was the spinnerbait. The spinnerbait uses a metal spoon-like mechanism to cause reflections in the water to attract fish. Its spinning movement and bright colors also help bring predatory bass in. The last fishing lure that I chose was the buzzbait. Similar to the spinnerbait, the buzzbait uses a spinning motion and a metal reflector. The difference in the two lures is that the buzzbait's metal piece is modified to make a buzzing noise, with the intention of using the bass's hearing to attract them. Each lure, having their own unique attributes, take advantage of the bass's traits and instincts in different ways. This variance is important in quantifying the data. For recording and visualizing my data, I created two charts, one for caught largemouth bass and one for additional bites. In the charts, each column represents a type of fishing lure and each row represents a time of day. The data that corresponds to a time of day and type of lure is the average of 3 trials. I conducted 3 trials for each lure at each given time. For example, I used each lure during the morning hours for 3 trials, then took the average catches and bites for each trial. I was able to do this for so many trials with the help of my 2 friends. We would all use the same lures at the same time, so all 3 trials could be completed simultaneously. Now for the results of my research. This is the chart that displays the average amount of fish caught of all the 3 trials for each fishing lure at each time of day. To summarize the key points of this chart, the highest overall average was the buzzbait, with a 2.33 average caught fish over the 3 trials during the overnight hours. The lowest overall average was the spinnerbait, with 0 fish caught over 3 trials during the midday hours. The most consistent fishing lure was the live worm, not going below an average of 1 fish caught and topping out at 2 fish caught. The additional bites chart mirrors the trends of the caught fish chart. Although it is possible the additional bites came from other fish, it is unlikely due to the type of lures I used and the locations that I fished. To summarize these results, these are the 4 main points I derived from the data. All lures were less effective during the midday hours. Lures with sounds such as the buzzbait or scents such as the live worm worked better during darker hours. And lures that go deeper worked the best during midday hours. And lastly, the live worm was the most successful overall. These results led me to conclude that my hypothesis was correct. There is a strong correlation between time of day and lure success. For starters, almost all of the lures were less effective during the midday and afternoon hours between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. The only lures that were somewhat effective were the crankbait and the live worm. This is most likely due to hotter temperatures during the day pushing fish deeper, allowing opportunities for deeper reaching lures such as the crankbait and the live worm. This shows a correlation between time of day and depth of lure. Furthermore, the buzzbait, known for making noise to attract the fish, and the live worm, the only lure I used with the scent, were the most effective lures during the darker hours. This shows that the largemouth bass prefer them at different times, likely due to their ability to use other senses like hearing and smell to hunt for food during nighttime hours. This data proves that time of day does have an impact on lure effectiveness. This new research fills the gap in several ways. Firstly, the data corroborates with known information. It fills a gap between the known information on what lures work best on largemouth bass and what time of day is best for bass fishing. It also finds the correlation between the two. Secondly, the data is specific to St. Lucie County, Florida, a small region in the large habitat range of the largemouth bass. It is likely that bass in other environments have different habits and the data wouldn't follow the same trends. The first limitation in my research was the locations. There are only so many places to fish for largemouth bass in St. Lucie County, and fish can develop resistance to lures if a spot is overfished. Secondly, my additional bite chart could possibly be skewed by other species of fish, but since the trends are similar to the other chart and the lures I used are primarily largemouth bass lures, I believe that the data does represent largemouth bass bites. A few delimitations that I could not control were fish population and type of fish in any given location. Furthermore, fishing doesn't always go your way. Everything could be put in place for you to have a successful fishing day and you just don't. This randomness is just a part of fishing and is uncontrollable, but can be worked around with some patience. This research can be beneficial to fishermen everywhere, but especially for largemouth bass anglers in St. Lucie County. Future research that could make this data more precise might be able to use more advanced technology, such as cameras. Other projects could also be done using different lures or on different species of fish. This future research raises additional questions such as, what other kinds of lures are more effective at different times? What other fish can this data be applied to? And where else in the world can this analysis be done? To summarize my presentation and answer the question again, time of day does have a significant impact on fishing lure effectiveness on largemouth bass. Thank you.
Thanks, Jax. How did the choices you made when designing or implementing your research method impact your research process itself?
I think the choices I made impacted it because I chose to use these 6 specific lures, and I believe that if I used different ones that had different characteristics, then they could possibly change the data.
How did the limitations of your method or data influence your new understanding?
The limitations influenced it because it was kind of difficult when there's only so many places to go fishing, and I think if I had more access to a wider range of locations, then I could have had more data to go off of.
What was the most important research skill you developed as a result of this process, and how might you apply it to your future endeavors?
Most beneficial one was probably staying consistent with my research, because I think I can apply that to future endeavors by just staying consistent with my schoolwork in the future.